Today, we will be learning the types of speech context. But before that, please make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell and comment down below too.
Speech context. What is it? Speech refers to the speaking part of communication, while context refers to the circumstances which form the setting for an idea, statement, or an event, and in terms of which it can be fully understood. If we put two and two together, speech context refers to the situation or environment and the circumstances in which communication occurs. So, what's so important about it? Well, learning about speech context is important because it helps you know what to do and what to expect from a certain situation, and it also helps you understand what people are trying to tell you under those specific circumstances.
Do you guys know the first type of speech context? Well, if not, it's intrapersonal communication. You may be questioning right now what intrapersonal communication is. Intrapersonal is essentially communicating with oneself. It is often said to include oneself view as a mediator of intrapersonal processes and is an outcome of interpersonal communication. This can be talking to yourself, reading aloud, writing, thinking, meditating, singing, and analyzing, for instance. So clearly, in intrapersonal communication, the speaker and the listener are the same. It is you. You send a message to yourself and yourself receives that message.
The next type of speech context is interpersonal communication. This is communication that involves more than one person. It's usually what you think of when you think of the word communication. Sometimes people can get confused between interpersonal communication and intrapersonal communication. So remember, intrapersonal communication refers to talking to yourself, while interpersonal communication is talking to someone else. Communication isn't only classified based on the number of participants, but it is also classified according to its purpose, as communication is always intentional. There are different types of interpersonal communication. First up, we've got dyadic communication. Dyadic communication takes place between two people, a dyad or a pair. Now, in this type of communication, the roles of speaker and listener are interchangeable. A simple conversation and a dialogue are examples of informal dyadic communication. On the other hand, a one-on-one job interview is an example of a formal dyadic communication.
Number 2, small group communication.
Small group communication takes place within a group of 1, 2, 3 to 15 members. In this type of communication, there are 4 things to take note of. It has a leader, an agenda, a goal, and rules to facilitate order. These rules are important because in this situation, the roles of speaker and listener are interchangeable, meaning these could get rather noisy. So these rules are needed to facilitate order and make sure that everyone understands what everyone else is saying. The group studies an issue, discusses it, and comes up with a solution. This is further divided into 2 subtypes. The first is the study group, which studies the issue, and the second is the task-oriented group, which does exactly the same thing as the study group. The only difference being that it has to come up with a solution or a plan to tackle the situation.
Up next is public communication. Unlike the other communication, here the rules of speaker and listeners are fixed. In this situation, there's only one speaker and an audience, although it's usually formal settings such as stage and all. It may also be informal, like an impromptu speech during a reunion or a speech during a rally. Fourth is mass communication. This may be dyadic small groups or publics, but it makes use of mass media technologies like TVs, radio, the internet, and social media.
And now we have organizational communication. This refers to the interaction of members along the links in an organizational structure. There are two variations of the organizational communication. The first one, we have formal organizations. This may have rules regarding the flow of information and communication. The chain of command will determine how members communicate. Communication flow is determined by hierarchy. Often, the information flows from leadership down to the other members. However, for the second variation, informal organizations, they do not have the specific guidelines for communication. All members are able to interact with each other without considering hierarchy. Members of informal organizations communicate freely with one another. Lastly, we have intercultural communication. It is the exchange of concepts, traditions, values, and practices between and among people of different nationalities and ways of life. Intercultural communication refers to the effects of communication behavior when different cultures interact together. Hence, one way of viewing intercultural communication is as communication that unfolds symbolic intercultural spaces.
We hope you learned something today. Thank you for watching.